Horror films are supposed to scare us. They're supposed to make us jump, scream, and then laugh it off once the lights come back on. But what if the horror refuses to stay on the screen? What if tragedy, coincidence, and unexplained events follow the people who create these films, blurring the line between fiction and reality? Hollywood is a land of dreams, but in the shadows, it hides a darker history. A history filled with accidents, mysterious deaths, and whispers of curses. Watch as we step behind the curtain of some of the most iconic horror movies ever made. From The Exorcist to Poltergeist, from The Omen to The Conjuring, we'll uncover the disturbing true stories that haunted their casts and crews. And by the end, we'll ask one chilling question. Were these tragedies nothing more than coincidence, or something much darker? Turn off the lights. Settle and dot and prepare yourself. Because once you hear these stories, you'll never look at horror films the same way again. It begins with The Exorcist, the 1973 film that redefined terror. The story of a young girl possessed by a demon shocked audiences. But what terrified people even more were the events happening off camera. First, a fire swept through the set. Everything was destroyed except for one room, the bedroom where the possession scenes were filmed. Untouched dot, almost as if something had protected it. Then came the injuries. Ellen Burstyn, who played the mother, suffered a permanent spinal injury during a stunt. Linda Blair, the 14-year-old star, was thrown around so violently during possession scenes that she too sustained long-term injuries. And then came the deaths. Actor Jack McGowan and actress Vasiliki Maliaros both died unexpectedly before the film's release. In total, at least 9 deaths became connected to the production. Even audiences weren't safe. Screenings were so disturbing that some viewers fainted, vomited, or suffered medical emergencies in theaters. In one case, a man collapsed and broke his jaw. Studios had to hire paramedics to stand by during showings. Whispers of a curse spread like wildfire. Was the film possessed? Director William Friedkin denied it, but he quietly brought in a Jesuit priest to bless the set. Slow, if The Exorcist was just a film, why did so much death surround it? And as terrifying as this was, it was only the beginning. Because just 3 years later, another film would make audiences wonder if the devil himself had stepped into Hollywood. In 1976, The Omen told the chilling story of Damien, a young boy who just might be the Antichrist. The film terrified audiences, but what terrified the crew was what happened behind the scenes. It began with lightning. Gregory Peck, the star, was flying to London when his plane was struck by lightning. The engine caught fire, but the plane landed safely. Only days later, executive producer Mace Neufeld's plane was struck by lightning too. Then came the plane crash. The crew had rented a small aircraft for aerial shots, but another group ended up using it instead. That plane crashed, killing everyone on board. In one scene, Peck's character is attacked by Rottweilers. The dogs were supposed to be carefully controlled, but instead, they went berserk, nearly killing the stuntman. The most horrifying moment, however, came after production. Special effects designer John Richardson had created the film's infamous beheading scene. Only weeks later, he was in a real-life car accident in the Netherlands. His assistant was decapitated, and nearby was a road sign. It read, "Omen to 66.6 kilometers away." Coincidence? Or a message? For many, The Omen proved that filming a story about the Antichrist came at a price. And if you thought that was disturbing, the next curse struck even closer to home. In 1982, audiences were captivated by Poltergeist, the story of a suburban family haunted by restless spirits. But the spirits weren't confined to the screen. The curse began with a chilling rumor. In one of the film's scariest scenes, Actress Jobeth Williams falls into a muddy pool filled with skeletons. Later, she learned those skeletons were real human remains, rented from a medical supply company because they were cheaper than plastic props. Many believe that decision invited a curse, and then tragedy struck. Dominique Dunn, the teenage daughter in the film, was murdered by her abusive ex-boyfriend just months after the film's release. Heather O'Rourke, the young girl who played Carol Ann, remembered for whispering, "They're here," starred in all 3 films. But in 1988, at just 12 years old, she suddenly died of septic shock after a misdiagnosis. 2 young actresses gone far too soon. Other cast members also met dark fates. Julian Beck, who played the terrifying preacher in Poltergeist 2, died of cancer during production. Actor Will Sampson passed away shortly after the sequel's release. And Jobeth Williams herself reported strange occurrences at home while filming. She'd returned to find objects moved around her apartment, as if something had followed her back from the set. With so many deaths and eerie events linked to the trilogy, the whispers grew louder. Poltergeist wasn't just a movie. It was cursed, but curses weren't reserved for ghost stories. Even in films that weren't supernatural at all, tragedy still struck. In 1994, The Crow told the story of a man brought back from the dead to avenge his murder. It became a cult classic. But for its star, Brandon Lee, the story became all too real. During a scene where his character shot, a prop gun malfunctioned. A fragment of a real bullet was accidentally lodged in the barrel. When the blank was fired, the fragment shot out, striking Lee in the abdomen. He collapsed out at first. Many thought it was acting. But Brandon Lee was dying. After hours of surgery, he was pronounced dead. He was only 28. The eerie parallels to his father, Bruce Lee, were impossible to ignore. Bruce had also died young, at 32, in mysterious circumstances. Both men were on the cusp of superstardom. Both were cut down too soon. And on set, rumors swirled of other accidents, crew members injured, a stunt gone wrong, even fires breaking out. Was it all coincidence? Or did The Crow live out its own dark prophecy? A man returning from death, even as the actor portraying him lost his own life. And the deeper we go, the darker the connections become. Because in our next story, a film about Satan's child would bleed into one of the most infamous murders in Hollywood history. In 1968, Roman Polanski directed Rosemary's Baby, a psychological horror about a young woman who suspects her unborn child is destined for evil. It was a masterpiece, but soon, real life turned horrifying. Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate, was brutally murdered in 1969 by the Manson family. She was 8 months pregnant. The parallels were too disturbing. A film about a woman fearing for her unborn child, followed by the murder of a pregnant actress, Polanski's own wife, at the hands of a cult. The connections didn't stop there. The film's composer, Krzysztof Komeda, died from a brain clot not long after the movie's release. Producer William Castle, tormented by illness, claimed he heard voices whispering curses before his death. For many, Rosemary's Baby wasn't just a film. It was an invitation, and what followed was one of the darkest chapters in Hollywood history. And yet, the curse of horror films wasn't limited to whispers of Satan. Sometimes it struck in violent, visible ways. In 1983, Twilight Zone, the movie set out to reimagine classic stories for a new generation. But on July 23rd, tragedy struck. During the filming of a helicopter scene, pyrotechnics ignited at the wrong time. The helicopter lost control and crashed. Actor Vic Morrow, along with 2 child actors, Mika Dinway and Renee Chun, were killed instantly. The incident shocked Hollywood. The deaths led to lawsuits, criminal charges, and a complete overhaul of safety regulations in filmmaking. Unlike other cursed films, there was nothing supernatural here. Just negligence, tragedy, and 3 lives lost on camera. But for many, it proved the point. When it comes to horror films, the line between fiction and reality is razor thin. And sometimes the spirits themselves seem to take notice. In 2013, The Conjuring introduced audiences to the cases of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. The film claimed to be based on a true story, and during production, the strange activity wasn't confined to the script. Actress Vera Farmiga reported waking up at exactly 3:07 every night while filming, the same time connected to hauntings in the story. She also claimed claw-like marks mysteriously appeared on her laptop after researching her role. The Perrin family, whose haunting inspired the film, said paranormal disturbances returned during production, as if the movie had reawakened the spirits. Director James Wan and the crew reported flickering lights, cold spots, and unexplained noises on set. The success of The Conjuring spawned sequels and spin-offs, each carrying their own strange stories. And in one case, the curse even had a name. In 2014, Annabelle told the story of a haunted doll tied to the Warrens' real-life occult museum, but the set itself seemed haunted. Crew members reported strange disturbances. During one scene, a lighting fixture crashed down, narrowly missing an actor. In another incident, a demonic figure used in filming inexplicably fell onto a janitor. Even the real Annabelle doll, locked away in the Warrens' museum, became infamous. Visitors reported car accidents, illnesses, and misfortunes after mocking the doll. The line between prop and paranormal seemed dangerously thin. And while some productions courted curses with demons and ghosts, others claimed to be haunted by objects even older and even darker. The stories don't stop with the classics. In 2012, The Possession was based on the legend of a Dybbuk box, a haunted wine cabinet from Jewish folklore. Crew members reported lights exploding on set, cold spots, and technical malfunctions. Even more chilling, the real Dybbuk box was stored for research and mysteriously burned in a warehouse fire. During the exorcism of Emily Rose in 2005, actors reported waking up at exactly 3 a.m. every night, the so-called witching hour. And in 2011, The Innkeepers was filmed inside a real-life haunted hotel. Cast and crew reported such disturbing activity that some refused to stay inside overnight. Whether coincidence or something more, these films seem to carry darkness with them long after the cameras stopped rolling. So, what do we make of it all? Skeptics argue these are coincidences. Airplanes get struck by lightning. People tragically die young. Stunts go wrong. The film industry is dangerous by nature, but believers see something else. Too many deaths, too many eerie parallels, too many signs that horror doesn't like to be mocked. Perhaps in telling stories of the devil, demons, and restless spirits, filmmakers invite those very forces into our world. Perhaps every camera roll is another door opening. Or perhaps the curse isn't supernatural at all. Maybe it's psychological. When we tell ourselves a story is cursed, we start to see every tragedy as proof. The curse lives in our minds, waiting for the next coincidence to feed. But then again, how many coincidences does it take before coincidence becomes something else? Horror films were designed to scare us from a safe distance. But as you've seen tonight, sometimes the danger is very, very real. From The Exorcist to The Conjuring, from The Omen to The Crow, the history of horror is filled with accidents, tragedies, and mysteries that may never be explained. Are they cursed? Or are they simply a reflection of our deepest fears? Fears so powerful that they seem to reach out of the screen and into our lives? One thing is certain, the next time you watch a horror film, You might wonder whether the true terror was behind the camera all along,